Dear colleagues, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's our great pleasure with Maurine Montagnat
and with Vladislav Yastrebov
to talk to you about scientific publishing. We are both research scientists at CNRS in France.
And we both participate to a Diamond Open Access journal in Mécanique that's called GTKM.
All right, let's start. First of all, we would like to express our deep gratitude to Eric and to Samuel for this very important opportunity to talk to you about this very important and challenging topic. It was difficult to assemble all the information in one short talk, but we'll try to do this. So the plan of our presentation is the following. First of all, we'll present you briefly the scientific landscape. Next, Maurine will present you the analysis of the survey that you filled. Thank you very much for those who replied. And finally, we'll present you some editors' perspective on the scientific publishing. We took some interviews, and thank you very much to the participants of these interviews. And the main objective of this presentation is to guide our solid mechanics community in navigating this dynamically changing and complex landscape of scientific publishing. Of course, we will be talking about peer-reviewed articles in peer-reviewed journals, which is the cornerstone of modern science. And here is a nice infographics from Nature back 10 years ago, where all the papers published by humanity built one on top of another and make it a mountain of about 6,000 meters, sorry. And now I think 2025 we are approaching Everest mountain. So we'll talk about this. But before we start, we need some more information from you. So because in our survey we forgot to put a very important question about how many papers do you co-sign, and we'll try to analyze the data with modern tools. And
the camera?
Yes, okay. And please, I will take a photo, and please raise your hand. We'll need this data.
So could you please raise your hand if you co-sign less than one paper per year in average? Thank you. Now raise your hand if you co-sign between 2 and 3 papers a year on average. Thank you. I get a picture. 4 to 6 papers a year. Okay. And then more than 6 papers per year. All right, thanks for your participation.
Thank you very much.
We complete the survey.
Okay, so it was this pages. Okay, now we are ready to talk about the scientific landscape, which is very difficult and complex, you will see. And we will start with the analysis of different peer-reviewed publication models. There are mainly 4 of them: subscription-based, gold open access, hybrid, and diamond open access. So subscription-based is a classical with a paywall on the reader side. So we need to buy individual articles or subscribe to a journal or to the bundled subscription. It means that we select a list of journals and we buy them with extra journals that maybe we don't need. Gold open access, it's about open access, so we share with everybody our research papers. However, there is a paywall on the other side, and there is a very high predatory danger. So there are many organizations that took profit of this initiative, this good initiative to open science. Hybrid publication model is when you combine classical journal, but you can publish sometimes papers in open access in it. And diamond open access is slightly less known in our community. So it's about true open access with no paywalls, and quite often it's community-driven. An important question here in this respect would be who pays for this nice opportunity to publish. And for subscription-based, it's on the reader side. So reader, who are the readers? We are the same scientists. And so it's our institution who paid the subscription. This classical model. For the gold open access, it's the author who pays. And mainly it can be at smaller scale, PIs, laboratory. For the hybrid, we'll both pay. And for the diamond open access, normally the idea is that nobody pays, not reader, no author. Well, there are no free lunch, of course, and in reality, our institutions and governments, they invest in the infrastructure to make such initiative live. Infrastructure and stuff also. In this game of publishing, there are people who can lose. And in the subscription mode, quite often there's Global South that cannot access the papers because they cannot pay subscription. And when I say Global South, I don't mean Global South in the economical sense. I could easily find myself in a Global South laboratory in France or somewhere else in Europe. It's a different Global South because of the global warming, maybe. So Global South and Gold Open Access cannot publish because there is a paywall barrier in front of the author, right? And the hybrid of Global South suffers again. However, in Diamond Open Access, there are not many citations, unfortunately, and the H index suffers in Diamond Open Access initiatives. Nowadays, in many countries, this hybrid mode transforms into so-called transformative agreements, which we signed with big publishers. So it's kind of a hybrid access, but with different conditions, and we can publish a lot of papers in open access under more or less the same price that we paid before. And for this transformative agreement, they are negotiated at the country scale by a big consortium which represents the country. And of course, this our public funds, public research budget who pays for this. Okay, now let's list the papers, the journals that we know in these 4 categories. Some of them, of course, you know quite well, especially those with Elsevier and Springer sign and ESMC, but some maybe you don't know. In the first category, you see Mémox and JOMS. Maybe you have not heard about this one. In Gold Open Access, there are not many journals that in our community that publish in Gold Open Access exclusively, but there are a lot of players, new players, MDPI and Frontiers, that produce a lot of journals, and they operate under Gold Open Access. I put the warning sign here because it's sometimes there is the limit of predatory journals, so we need to be careful with these publishers. And for the Diamond Open Access, maybe you don't know some of them. Compte rendu mécanique, Archives of Mechanics from the Polish Academy of Science, JTChem, SciPost Physics, and some other initiatives. Okay, in terms of publication volumes, so we publish more and more, there are more and more papers produced, and you can see the comparison between 2 models, the hybrid one, the classical one with Elsevier and Springer in terms of number of kilo articles per year, and new players, MDPI and Frontiers, who rise quite rapidly, and you see in terms of volume of publications, MDPI already overpassed Springer. However, there is a reason behind this, and among other things that I would like to highlight, that MDPI provides the reviewers with only 7 days for the review. Okay, now we'd like to open our research right and publish in open access, and there is a price, APC, article processing charge, and here's the list, just a random selection of journals in which we can publish by paying APC, and the paper will be open. To get a reference point for this price, of course, it's hard to know it's expensive or cheap. To give a reference with some historical context, one paper published in open access in IJSS, it's the same price as 6 years of institutional subscription to JOMS, published by non-profit MSP publisher, or 23 years of institutional subscription for Mémox, published by the same publisher. But of course, at the same time, in Diamond Open Access, as I said already, we can publish in open access for free. All right, let's go further. But now, this individual open access, they disappear, more or less, because in many countries, we have signed, or signed again, a transformative agreement with big publishers. For example, in France, recently we signed a big transformative agreement, and we pay 34 million euro per year to Elsevier, but we can now publish 10,000 papers in open access in almost every journal by Elsevier. The initial idea of this transformative agreement was to transform this hybrid access, which cost a lot to countries and to institutions, to more open access publication mode at a fair price. Are we there? Maybe, maybe not. Nevertheless, at the small scale, at the scale of individual authors and researchers and lab scale, we see that now we don't pay for open access, and we can make our papers open access. All right, now let's talk a little bit about metrics. The most classical one is relevant for journals. It's impact factor. Of course, you know what's impact factor. It's the number of citations in year X that all the papers published in X-1 and X-2 collected. And so the impact factor can be computed by this equation, very simple. And who counts these numbers? This is a small company, Clarivate, small company with 2.7 billion euro of revenue, founded recently. And so they handle Web of Science as a database of journals, right? To get impact factor for your journal, you need to be indexed in this database, and Clarivate will compute for you this impact factor, citations, and so on. And also will distribute your journal in quartiles, Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, depending on the impact factor that you get. Nowadays in France, there are many institutions that don't use Web of Science any longer because there is open access and non-profit alternatives like OpenAlex, in which all these statistics can be computed as well. Okay, now let's rank the same journals in terms of impact factor, starting with IJP. And I also show impact factor and APC cost, the cost of open access publishing. And it's more or less correlated. The high impact factor, the high price you pay, except IJP. So the impact factor per price, it's much higher. In diamond open access journals, the impact factors are much smaller. But if you divide by 0, you'll get infinite impact factor to cost ratio. And these impact factors for major journals, they increase with time. You can see for JMPS, IJSS, CMAME, but they keep at the same level in Archives of Mechanics, example of diamond open access journal. Another metrics is H-index. Of course, you know about H-index. It can be computed, and it's supposed to measure our productivity and number of citations our paper attract. It can be easily computed. And we developed a very simple mathematical model that shows that your H-index increases with time proportionally to with the prefactor, which is square root of impact factor times productivity. Okay, so it means that only the product of both matters. All right. And now, as a scientist, we can formulate on the publisher side or author side a very simple optimization problem. Okay, let's maximize impact factor under some conditions. And with limited resources, convex optimization, constraint optimization problem. And for scientists, we can formulate the same problem for H-index optimization and win the games scientists play. But as you know, the Goodhart's law, well formulated by Merrill Stratham, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure, and sometimes it's about it. But safely, fortunately, we are saved a little bit on this side, because in 2012, in San Francisco, there was suggested a declaration on research assessment, which is called SF-DORA, San Francisco DORA, which contains a list of recommendations for funding agencies, institutions, and researchers with the idea to decorrelate the quality of research that we produce with bibliometrics, with H-index and with impact factor, to eliminate the use of these metrics in foundings, appointments, and promotions. The key idea is that impact factor of journal in which you publish does not necessarily reflect the quality of the research we do. And this San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment was signed by many, many institutions all around the world. Maybe you can find the logo of your institution here or your funding agency. And for example, in France, it is taken very seriously at ENR Research Agency, at ACNRS, where we work. And going further, 10 years later, in 2022, European Commission also suggested the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, which is called COARA, which was integrated with a lot of members all around Europe, with the key idea is the same. We need to decorrelate metrics from the quality for assessment of the research. And here are many more countries and many more institutions signed this, entered in this coalition, and they are members now, and they're committed to respect these rules. All right, and to end with this part, but currently our non-profit science, for the moment, chooses very for-profit publishers, and maybe we can do a little bit better and support community-led initiatives with a reasonable price, subscription-based papers, journals, and Diamond Open Access initiatives.
Okay, so thanks, Vlad. And now maybe we can shift to the survey analysis. So thanks to all the participants who accepted to answer our survey about researchers' perspectives and expectation in scientific publication. Though, no, it's the wrong direction. So there were about 300 participants to this survey, very similar to the participant for the Come by Train Award, so it's a good sign. And maybe let me first present who were the participants. So most of the people, people who were having a very different position, but a noticeable thing is that about more than 45% of the participants of the survey were doctoral candidate or postdoctoral fellow, so non-permanent scientists. People participating to this survey were also coming from many different countries, but more than 45% from France, and probably very linked to the amount of French participants to this conference too. So we asked first to the participant a few questions about the ways they selected the journal to which they published their article. And an interesting point for us was that the target auditory came far before all the other suggestions that we gave, nearby the impact factor also, but also that and then the other criterion came a little lower, like editorial board, editorial model, and a surprising answer was also that only 9% of the response were pointing at short time to publication. There were a few other responses who cited answer like reputation, prestige, or also journal I trust because of ethical behavior. What are the expected added value that authors are looking for from a journal? And once again, we were quite surprised by the answer with, the main answer being a fair and efficient review process. So the way we analyze it is that people like to make sure that their articles are of good quality so that we can trust science that is in most of our articles. Second came the visibility, but also open access, and surprisingly, a diamond open access appeared for about 10% of the response. There were a few also verbatim coming out of the other answers that was possible, and one of them is, for instance, raising the fact that they value a lot the review process, so it's better quality when it's not too fast. And it goes also in the same way that the fact that only 90% of the response were pointing a fast publication as an important added value. And also some were raising the fact that maybe we could even have more reviewers, because only 2 reviewers is probably not enough to state on the truth of a research. So then we asked some more tricky question about how much people who participate knew about the publishing landscape. And the first question was about how much do you know about Diamond Open Access Journal. Interestingly, 11% of the respondents had already published into one of them. 23% know what it is, but only, but more than, let's say, 60% of the respondents, about 60% of the respondents either don't know at all what diamond open access is or know what it is, but don't know exactly what it is. So I'm happy we're here today, actually. Then another question was how important is for you the open science approach. So open science approach include open data, open source, and open access. And we were very happy to read that only 8% of the participants noticed a minor importance given to this open science approach, but most of the respondents considered it as very important or at least important. Then came the question about transformative agreements. So Vlad did explain you what is expected to be transformative agreement. And the answer was that most of the participants didn't know about the existence of transformative agreement and what they consist in. So, example was given by Vlad just before, and if you want some more information, you can go to this site about this model. A last question was about the future of scientific publishing, and it was about how people or how participants envision the future of scientific publishing. And so there were a lot of participants who say that we will publish always more, so a kind of business as usual view of the future. But just after this answer, some very optimistic people, and 30% of optimistic response came with the fact that community-driven diamond open access will take the lead. So we were very happy to see this very optimistic response, view of the future. Another view of the future that came strongly into the percentage of response is that we will publish less but better. And this view also was strongly present into the verbatim from the other part of the answers that were possible, like with answer like we will publish less but better, and this is more dream, but still it is a dream. And people hoping to publish less and better, people raising the fact that the field is contaminated by the use of publication for career progression rather than for scientific communication. Another point of view was that classical publishing market will still grow the way it is. And with that, I'll let Vlad back to the stage and with editorial perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Maurine. So you see, we are involved in Diamond Open Access initiative, so we are slightly biased in this respect of scientific publishing. Therefore, we wanted to collect some information from editors, and we could record 4 interviews with editors and editors-in-chief of different journals. And I would like to thank very much Anna, Alexander Popp, David Rodney, and Samuel for your time and for being available for this interview. And so, of course, all this interview is about 30 minutes every, so we had no time to listen to all the aspects. Nevertheless, I selected some pieces.
So the Compte Rendu Mécanique is a very special journal. It has a strong historical background coming from the beginning of 19th century by Arago. So this is very important to support this historical aspect. And the Compte Rendu exists for many disciplines, physics, chemistry, and mechanics. And you can find the list also in paleontology. There are many of them. So the topics, disciplines are very important. This is in contrast to proceeding of Royal Society, for instance, where everything is mixed. So this is a result of history. And Compte Rendu Mécanique is very special. Mécanique is a lively science today with many theoretical aspects and engineering application. And the Compte Rendu are very special because the scope is very broad. I must say that we are interested in papers where you have some theoretical background and you have some numerical and modeling aspects and also experimental results. So it means that in the broad scope of mechanics we have limited to modeling oriented and simulation oriented papers, but we like also very important experiments that we should share with the community.
what makes a good paper is it's a very tough question.
In terms of dissemination and impact somehow.
So in terms of dissemination, some years ago, I mean at the beginning of my career, I was always thinking that even if you don't publish in a very well-known journal, if you went to conferences, presented your work, if your work was good, it will be known. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, there are so many journals, so many conferences that this is no longer really true. You really have to work very hard to get your work known. I think it depends on the generations. I think for the younger generations, social media, having a feed on some of the social medias is very important for the journals to disseminate their papers, and even authors on their own should disseminate as much as they can on social media. I think that's one of the main avenue for information nowadays. I think going to conferences is still extremely important to present your work and bring people to know of your work and then read your papers. Without that, it's much harder. Now the issue is that there are so many conferences that you will never be able to talk to everybody in your community, but that's probably another issue. So.
Okay, so a good review, I think the review is the most important step during the submission, revision, and publishing of a paper. The most important aspects for me are the response of the reviewers. So, of course, it's important also the first decision made by the editor-in-chief. That excludes the very bad contribution. But then, if the contribution is really a novelty, only the expert can decide. So the function of the reviewer is really to compare the contribution with what is actually in the literature and to decide if this is really new, if it's well expressed, well presented, because also a very bad editorial presentation makes the paper difficult to evaluate, to be evaluated. Okay, so the review has this very important function to verify that there is a new content, verify that the presentation is able to transmit the information that is in the paper, and also to avoid, these very unethical things that are the self-citation and all these things that are very bad for the reputation of the journal and are very bad for every single paper.
First of all, I think it's always important but that applies to many parts of our system, but to not complain about the state of a system, but to actually contribute and also change how the game is played. So, and I think we're all very well aware that the publication system has certain problems, and that I think both of those journals that were just mentioned, they have a different approach, but both of those journals have some ideas of maybe giving a new touch and a new alternative to the publication system, and to not just continue as usual. And that's the main motivation behind that. So to really contribute to those changes in how we publish and how we manage the publication system.
I think open science for me, it's the perfect example of a bad good idea. I think we live in a crazy system where we as scientists do everything. We find the money to do the science, we do the science, we write the paper, we evaluate the paper, we do everything, and then there are publishing companies that make money out of it. And so open science started as a very good idea. The fact that everybody should have access to the papers was, I think, very important. The issue with me is that some of the publishing companies have used that to make even more money than they made before. And that makes absolutely no sense for me. I don't mind paying to be published so that the paper will be accessible to everybody. I think that's a good idea, but it should be a fair price. And setting the price of a paper like modern art, the more expensive, the better the journal. Makes zero sense for me. So there should really be non-profit companies that should take care of scientific publication. Unfortunately, I mean, there are some companies, some non-profit that already do it. The issue is that the reputation of a journal takes years to build. So when you start from scratch a new journal, before it gets its reputation, it's gonna take 5 to 10 years at the very, very minimum. And so I think, I hope that more and more fair journal will be created. But I also know that, and this is especially important for students who need to build their CVs, and there are some journals of reference, and these, because they dominate the market, they can put any price on their papers, and that's unfortunate. So I'm really hoping that there are new journals that will be created.
I'm not sure if you hear anything from this interview. The quality of the sound, even though we did our best, was not great. But all that will be shared with you. We will validate with the participants of the interview, and but the interview of Samuel Forest is already on YouTube, so can be listened in integrality. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you again, Eric and Samuel, for this opportunity to talk to you about scientific publication.